So in today's video, I'm looking at every single hero with every single one of the main aspects, but also at every single player count, which is a huge undertaking. That is 600 different variables with the kind of way I've categorized things here. And yeah, it's been a lot of work. I actually started work on this over a month ago. Before I did my Understanding the Aspects video, that video actually came from wanting to make this video, but I felt that was necessary to do first. So it's been a lot of effort here. I've gone over all these different categories and heroes time and time again, tweaking things, trying to make them correct. But of course, this is very opinion based. I'm not claiming I'm some sort of authority on the game, just someone who's played it far, far too much, trying to share my opinion in case it helps you guys. And to make matters worse, I'm doing it twice. You see, I wanted to make this video to help new players, but I've realized most of my audience are experienced players. They're probably not going to get a lot out of it if it was just for new players. So this is a look at a hero with a very small card collection, and this is a look at them with all the cards. So that's right, I'm rating every hero with every aspect at every player count twice, with so many different variables and cards to consider. So this has been a massive headache, but let's just get into it. So first things first, we have a key here on the left. If you're not sure what these shapes and letters mean, I do think it's fairly obvious, but just in case you play the game in a different language or, colorblind, something like that, hopefully this helps. Secondly, I do want to stress again that the first look is assuming the player does not have a full collection. So if you see me rate protection a little bit low for Iron Man, I'm assuming that person might not actually have energy barrier, they might not have repurpose, that kind of thing. So just wait for the second look and then you can complain in the comments. I will say we're all going to have different opinions here. You will see your favorite aspect on at least one character probably be rated lowest at some kind of player count. Just how it is, there's so many different combinations, and it's all, of course, just my opinion. And even some of my favorite combinations of hero and aspect I have rated lowest. Now, all these recommendations are meant as a starting point, so I do think every hero is worth exploring in every aspect. Almost every aspect works well for every hero to some extent, especially, if you've got a full card collection. But this is meant to help people where they're starting off to get to grips with the character and have the best kind of experience they can. Next up, I do just want to say threat removal is always on high demand. What that line actually means is that leadership and justice are going to score pretty high, especially in solo play, especially if your character has a very low baseline threat removal. And now the other point I want to bring up is that best does not equal strongest. I'm rating what aspect is best for each character. That doesn't mean it's the most powerful aspect. In most cases, I want to say it does, but I am sort of excluding leadership with its strongest builds because leadership, when it's optimized with all the best cards in all the best ways, is a little bit of a powerhouse that can kind of skew things, but I don't think that would really be very fun to play or very enjoyable to watch, so I'm sort of artificially lowering leadership a bit. Now, I don't think leadership is always the strongest option, but it's always at least very close to, so that is where that stands. Leadership builds I'm highlighting here are going to be more about synergies, covering weaknesses, or working with traits. Next and last is that protection had a very rough start. So if you see me rating protection low from a small player card collection kind of perspective, it's because the core set protection is not great. The cards are really good, but they're not good in combination. They do not form cohesive decks. It is why in my recent buyer's guide, I always put the hero pack with protection up first. That is the one I recommend the most. Protection with a full card collection, actually really, really strong. But starting off, it's a little bit weak. So while I'm happy to artificially maybe kind of lower leadership for the sake of variety and fun, I think inflating protection for that same reason would maybe lead people to bad experiences where protection can't quite keep up with the experience they might like to have until they've got more cards. So hopefully that makes sense. And if not, hopefully it will make sense as we go through the video. And let's really get into it now. So we're starting with Spider-Man, classic character, very, very rich. And I think he's best with Justice. Comes with Justice in the core set. It's because his thwarting is some of the worst in the game, and this kind of comes down to the philosophy of the game itself. The way the game really works in solo play is that you have to deal with everything yourself unless you are rushing, and this video won't talk about rush that much. It's not my preferred way to play the game. I think it's a way to play the game where you try to ignore as much of the game as possible, which it has its fun in sort of the challenge of it, but personally isn't to my taste. Yeah, I just think Justice really rounds out Spider-Man where you need to deal with everything. He has decent bit of damage, he has really good defense, but he desperately needs that threat removal. We will see this on a lot of characters with one thwarting and better stats elsewhere that Justice is going to score high. And we have so many different combinations and characters to talk about. I'm not going to be talking about all of them, but yeah, just keep that in mind. Justice is very good for low thwarting characters. And again, protection does suit him in multiplayer, but the core set, if you've got a small collection, it's just not going to do the job as well as the other aspects, in my opinion. But moving on to a full collection, and protection moves up in a big way. In solo play, you've got a lot better threat removal, especially with allies, but also events. and in multiplayer, you can just have some really, really good solid decks. So I think that works well. And something you're also going to see throughout the video is characters who I rate very high for Justice in solo play might fall off as we go into multiplayer. It's kind of a diagonal line downwards. As the more players you add, the worse Justice is for them, in my opinion. Now, I think Spider-Man, with a full card collection especially, can play a really, really good Justice deck, but I don't think it plays as well as the other aspects. I think they're even better, and part of the reason for this is if your threat removal in your hero kit is pretty low, then you're going to have turns where you draw lots of hero cards and you just don't have threat removal options. If your hero kit has really good threat removal, and then you add in really good threat removal, it's just going to be more consistent turn to turn at finding those good threat removal options and getting them out there. So even though Spider-Man is very rich, he can pay for a lot of cards, he can pay for a lot of good threat removal Justice cards, it is not going to maybe be as consistent as I would personally like, though it's still a very, very good option. You know, I've got 3 categories here, best, great, and okay. I went for this because even the worst aspects of the worst player accounts can still work and you can still have a lot of fun. You know, worst is really a bad way to say it. Least complementary, least, beneficial, but yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Next up, we have Captain Marvel. And again, I've got just as high here. I do think of the 3 main pillars of the game: damage, threat removal, survivability. I do think threat removal is her weakest. That's kind of why it scores high in solo, but it's not that bad at all. And leadership is just very well suited to card draw and the things she wants to pay for. She has a lot of big resource cards that can pay for big allies. It just works really, really well at a base level. So Justice and Leadership are going to do really well solo. And I actually think Justice does well in multiplayer because she has so much card draw and so many resources, way more than Spider-Man, and still better base footing than Spider-Man, that I just think it works really well. Aggression, no problems with it, but I don't think it stands out. And again, core set protection, kind of rough, guys, not that good. Moving into having a full collection, protection moves up in a big way. We've got muster courage on expert mode, but also just having better allies, better cards in general. It's going to work out really nicely for Captain Marvel. Moving on from that, we've got Black Panther, and again, his threat removal, not all that good. We're going to see solo just as high, and it's going to kind of slide downwards, but I still think it's very strong. He's got so many resources that Justice is actually pretty good for him still. It's not bad by any means in 3 and 4 player, but I do prefer it for solo or 2 player, and maybe prefer a different character in 3 and 4 player. Now, he has a protection precon in the core set, but it's pretty atrocious, guys. It's really not very good. And he can work with protection, but I don't think it calls out to him. Actually, with his healing, he doesn't necessarily need to defend too much. With a base defense of 2 instead of 3, I don't know if he really wants to build all into it in multiplayer when he can provide so much damage. So that's kind of the gist of Black Panther. Again, just like Captain Marvel, protection itself gets better, so it is better for Black Panther. Otherwise, I think things mostly stay the same. He does love the card draw that Leadership and Justice bring, which can really help him get his upgrades in or get more Wakanda Forevers going, which are very, very powerful and what he wants to really base his primary game plan on most of the time. Next up, we have Iron Man, who changes significantly when we get a bigger card pool. But to start with, we're really just looking for tech cards which are in his hero kit, which means we need card draw, which is Leadership, or we need to stay Alter Ego, which means Justice to try and keep the threat under control when we do flip down, or with allies. Leadership can do that a lot as well. So yeah, a little bit rough for Iron Man. If you're not aware, he gets +1 hand size for each tech upgrade he controls, and that means he starts with a hand size of 1 in hero form when you don't have any tech. You need to stay in Alter Ego to build up. Justice and Leadership are going to help you the most there to build up and keep the threat under control until you can flip down, hopefully in turn 2. But with the core set, you can get very unlucky and it can be pretty rough. Aggression and protection, not really doing too much for him here. Now, with a full card collection, there are a lot more tech cards added into the aspects. Protection gets the most, it just works with them really well. They all have the energy resource, which is what he wants, as does Repurpose. It has the energy resource and it works with tech cards. So Iron Man's protection builds just get really, really good. Now, in aggression, he can dive bomb. There are lots of really different good builds for him, especially with Digging Deep and White Fox now. He's going to be the next character I talk about in my favorite deck series. But yeah, looking a bit rough for protection with a small card collection, but looking very good once you have everything. Once you have Miss Marvel's pack, it definitely gets a lot better. If you get SPDR, Spider's pack, very, very strong. Then we have She-Hulk, who in solo play, I still think Justice and Leadership are the best for her. Even though in the 1.5 rules, she got some nice little changes that help her out. Basically, the way cards sort of work and don't work now, the way they target things. Long story short, superhuman strength, if you defeat a minion when you attack, or if the villain is already stunned, you do not lose that card, which boosts your attack and stuns the enemy, because the enemy is already stunned or there is no enemy left to be stunned. So this means you can do a lot more basic attacks with higher stats. If this is confusing, it's worth looking up. People have videos on this. It's really, really good. But in solo play, you don't have superhuman strength out, right away. You still have to deal with all the threat removal and things like that. You have very low card draw early on, although it does get better for She-Hulk with Focused Rage. So Justice and Leadership really help shore up her weaknesses, but also with a small card collection, you won't have many ways to stun the villain and ready up to use those boosted stats again. So Aggression Protection, not scoring as high as you might imagine. Moving into multiplayer, you can just focus all on damage. You don't need to worry about threat removal. Someone else can do that for you. So Aggression and Leadership doing very well there. With a full card collection, Protection has so many ways to ready that I just think in multiplayer, when you're focusing on damage, when you've got that huge attack stat, Protection is the best. Now in solo play, I do still think it's Justice and Leadership, but I think Leadership gets so strong it definitely contends with Justice for the top spot. They're both very, very good. And again, Aggression and Protection certainly aren't bad in solo play, but can be inconsistent. If you do not find your superhuman strengths early, you're hitting pretty hard, right? But it's nothing, special. Her strongest point is getting those superhuman strengths out. Justice and Leadership help her do that. So that is kind of how I rate these. Next up, we have Captain America, and this is a pretty easy one. He's really, really good with everything. If I had to pick a strongest aspect, it is probably going to be leadership, but really, you cannot go wrong with this. If you're looking to play a certain aspect on Captain America, there are no wrong choices, and that trend continues all the way up to having a full card collection. He is just solid all around before you add a single card in, and he's so flexible. Whatever card you add in, he's probably going to be good with it. That is one of the reasons he is one of the best characters for new players. Now we have Miss Marvel, who's a very interesting character, very much a character ahead of her time, who I do rate very highly solo in Justice, and I also think Aggression is very good for her. She comes with Melee, which is a attack that hits 2 different targets, and she also comes with a card called Embiggen, which increases the damage your attacks do. So now you're dealing extra damage to 2 different targets, and that's very good. Justice doesn't have that kind of card necessarily in a small collection. When you have a bigger collection, Justice does, and that means Justice, I think, at every player count with a full collection is her strongest. A smaller collection, probably just in solo. I do think Aggression with her in multiplayer 2-3 player is still very, very, very good. And Protection even moves up as well, because of course it does, but there are some nice attacks and things she can combo with as well. Miss Marvel wants events, she wants attacks, she wants forwarding more than anything. She can do some things with defense cards, and she does have Wiggle Room, which is an unbelievably good card for her. But generally, I do think Justice and Aggression, leaning into those attacking and forwarding cards, does extremely well. So rare footage of Leadership last. Leadership can be extremely good with her, but it doesn't really synergize with her. She doesn't really want much to do with allies, apart from maybe a few just to help smooth out her events. Kind of allies are more consistent than events, is the long story short. Then we have Thor. Thor, I think, is a character very famous for being played in Aggression, but I don't think that is a good choice in solo. He has so much damage, you do not need to add more damage in solo play most of the time. You actually want to add threat removal and consistency with allies to help him out. Justice and Leadership do that really, really well. And again, Aggression, you don't really need it, so it's scoring low here in solo play. Move over to multiplayer, and yeah, he's so good with Aggression. So much synergy, especially with Get Over here, with things like Mean Swing and Skilled Strike. It's just, there's a lot of ways you can do a lot of good things with him. And when you have a full collection, you can use all of those cards and even the Asgard basic support card, which will let you start getting in allies for a really good price. It's very, very strong. I don't think he changes as you increase the player count. Although, again, Aggression Protection will get a lot better in solo play. I still think Justice and Leadership really stand out for Thor, and I would recommend them. So, then we have Black Widow, and Leadership, I think, does so well here. So, one of the strongest leadership cards in the entire game is easily Rapid Response, which happens to be a preparation card, and she's all about preparation cards. It is very synergistic. She can get it back with Save House when she's Alter Ego, and she can do some disgustingly good things with it. So for Black Widow, I'm saying Leadership is her best, then Justice second, although I do think she plays Justice extremely well. My favorite is Aggression, but Justice and Leadership just do a lot better overall. So if you're looking for results, if you're looking for performance, then yeah, I can't recommend Aggression or Protection. But if you do want to have fun with her, and she can do very well in Aggression Protection, I must stress, you can definitely try that and have a lot of fun. That is, again, how I like to play her. I think that stays true as well with a full card collection, for the most part. A few little changes here and there, but I wouldn't rank any one aspect over the others differently to before. Then we have Doctor Strange, and he's extremely good in all the aspects, and I was tempted to put them all up at best, but really, he has a card which hands out lots of toughs. In solo play, you're going to need lots of allies out to receive those toughs to get maximum efficiency. Leadership also has a lot of card draw, even just from the core set, so Leadership is going to do very, very well with Doctor Strange in every circumstance. Going into a full card collection, I don't think much changes, except Protection moves up. Protection can ready you up, which means you can use more of the Invocation deck, because as you can see on Doctor Strange's card here, he has to exhaust to play sort of to trigger an Invocation card, as it were. So yeah, Leadership just doing extremely well for Doctor Strange overall. Then we have Hulk. And outside of Rush, if you're going to play a full game with Hulk, well, he has 0 forwarding and one of the worst, if not the worst, forwarding card in the entire game. So, lo and behold, he needs Justice to show up his threat removal. Leadership, though, can do extremely well. I do like Leadership Hulk. I do think if you just want to hit the villain, you can have a lot of fun with Aggression. And I think this trend stays true even with a full card collection. Protection does get better. Hulk can do fine with Protection, but I do think Aggression and Leadership just a little bit less complicated, and Justice is just providing what he really needs. Multiplayer, just hit things, doesn't matter what your card collection is. You know, Hulk is going to want to be the one punching things, and you can do that pretty well in Protection, but again, I do rate Aggression and Leadership a little bit better. Then we have Hawkeye moving into the Rise of Red Skull expansion box, and he has 1 defense and 9 hit points, so he is very, very squishy. He needs allies to protect him. Leadership generally has the best allies, and that is the long and short of it in all honesty. And he can do different things with Aggression. He can get a lot of damage out. I think that's very good in multiplayer, but he can still get a lot of damage out with Leadership while making sure all his sort of defense is covered, while synergizing with his Avenger trait. And I just think that is excellent. So I do really rate Leadership for solo and multiplayer. But I would say with a full card collection, I think Protection gets a lot better. I actually think he does pretty well with readying Protection and even Repurpose, just because with Hawkeye's bow out, which he's practically guaranteed, he actually has an effective attack stat of 3, which I think is very good. And another reason I like Leadership, actually, I should have mentioned, is that his signature ally is particularly good. And she has a shield trait, so does Hawkeye on his other side. I do think he does very well with Shield Justice, and I don't even think Justice is bad at 3 to 4 player for him, not at all. I've actually done it myself. I think it's very good, but I don't think it's as good as the other aspects. Hopefully that makes sense. Next up, we have Spider-Woman, who I could have just put in all aspects really good anyway, but I do think if you're playing her solo, especially with a small collection, Leadership will be your best bet, followed by Justice. She does have a lot of innate threat removal, but you can just take the threat removal Justice comes with and lean more into damage from her own cards and other cards you add in from another aspect. So that's generally how I look at it. But once you expand to a full card collection, the ability to take these sort of best threat removal from Aggression and Protection just means you can just play her with any kind of combination and do extraordinarily well. Yeah, okay, maybe Leadership builds slightly stronger overall, but that's a boring theme. They're all really good. You cannot go wrong with Spider-Woman with any of the aspects, in all honesty. Then we have Ant-Man, very, very fun character. Now, because he can flip to tiny form and then giant form, then to tiny form, every other turn, he gets to ping 1 threat of a scheme, which actually for solo play is very strong and can cover a lot of the threat removal you need. With that said, he still cannot take out side schemes on demand. His own forwarding card, I think, is quite bad. He only has 1 threat removal card in his whole deck. So I do think Justice helps him. If there's a bad side scheme come in, he won't be able to deal with it very quickly unless he's in Justice or got a bunch of allies out, which again, Leadership works really well. He has the Avenger trait, so it all lines up very nicely. Leadership Avengers being very strong. In multiplayer, I actually still really like Leadership with a small card collection, though I do think Aggression is generally a very strong option. And like I said, Justice really drops off as you go into multiplayer, because although flipping to tiny form can let you remove 1 threat each time, good for solo play, that 1 extra threat removal does not hold up in multiplayer. This generally holds true with a bigger card collection, but I do think Protection in general gets better. I actually quite like him with Repurpose, and I actually think Aggression is very, very good as well. It doesn't quite make it into best for me for solo play, although I think it's very, very strong, but it is good, so I wanted to signify that it is, you know, really worth playing. Next up, we have Wasp, who is a very interesting character, very unique kind of way her kit can interact with the aspects, and her hero cards tend to be a little bit weaker than average, which means you might be driven to play aspect cards even more than usual. So in solo play, again, Leadership Justice, I don't really need to explain that at this point. Her threat removal is actually pretty decent, but her damage is even better, so I really think Justice and Leadership really just help round her out. And she has an alter ego ability to shuffle mental resource cards back into your deck. What do you have in the core set? You have Nick Fury. Even if you have a small card collection, cards with a mental resource just tend to be very good. So her being able to shuffle mental resource cards back into her deck is very, very strong. And Leadership definitely has the most of those. So Leadership very good for her. When you move into multiplayer, I really think she can do absolutely anything. She has a good defense stat, and she doesn't have to go alter ego and use that ability at all. So she can really benefit from all the defense cards kind of every turn you need to. You can just stay in giant form. Unlike Ant-Man, who wants to keep changing, she can stay in her form with the best defense all the time. Then we have things like Aggression, being able to split the damage. That's really efficient for taking out minions, just very, very good. I think this general trend continues into a bigger player count, but the problem is Leadership has so many really good mental sort of resource cards that I just think being able to shuffle all those back into your deck again and again, you can't really compete with it, and it is synergizing with her ability, so we've got to counter it. So full card collection, 110% recommend Leadership, but every aspect is worth playing with her by a large margin. They are all very fun. Then we have Quicksilver, and I think people will be surprised to see leadership first for him in solo play, but the thing is his biggest weakness is he's slow to set up. Now that is quite funny as his whole superpower is being fast, but he really needs his upgrades in play to get good stats to make use of readying up to, use those stats more. So leadership has the most card draw with a small collection that I can guarantee someone will have. So lo and behold, getting those allies out to get card draw will help you set up your upgrades faster and let you do Quicksilver things better in that way. And you cannot kind of guarantee the order you will get your upgrades. So you might get your plus forwarding upgrade first, and leadership being the most flexible aspect means if Quicksilver is handling the forwarding in the early game, your allies can handle the damage. Maybe Quicksilver finds his attack upgrade early on. Well, now your allies will cover the threat removal while Quicksilver is doing more of the damage, and so on. So I really think leadership makes for a very smooth Quicksilver game in solo play. Justice is up next, just for the reasons Justice is good in solo play. But in multiplayer, when you can really focus on Quicksilver doing Quicksilver things, I think it really pays off to specialize in a big way. If you take an aggression Quicksilver build, readying up with a huge attack stat, very strong. Protection, defending multiple times, very, very strong. Justice with a huge threat removal stat, forwarding multiple times, really very powerful. And that trend, I think, does generally continue into multiplayer. But I do think Justice gets a lot more card draw as well as you expand your card pool. Things like Clear the Area, Skilled Investigator, one way or another, they're all just very, very good. So if you have those cards, Justice can accelerate his setup as well as getting more good damage cards that can kind of cover for him maybe finding his forwarding or defense upgrades before his attack upgrade and so on. So that's how I rate Quicksilver. Next up, we have Scarlet Witch, but she's got Justice and Leadership high in solo, but maybe not for the reasons you'd think. She in some ways has enough damage already. She has lots and lots of damage. Now, she can struggle kind of to consistently damage. If she's overwhelmed by lots of minions, she won't always have damage to hand. But when she needs to destroy the villain, Molecular Decay is so good, but Hexbot will also be putting out a lot of damage. So I think that's very strong. I just think Justice and Leadership round her out a little bit better. Leadership, especially with those allies that can attack or thwart quite well, when she is maybe, using Hexbot and not quite sure if she's going to be getting damage or threat removal from it. But nonetheless, I do think Justice and Leadership offer a really, really smooth game for her, over aggression, over protection, and I really think it continues with a full card collection as well, although I do think Leadership starts to outshine Justice because it has, the full complement of allies, which you can use Chaos Magic to cheat in for cheap, Summoning Spell as well, probably the best Mystic sort of aspect event that you can now cheat in allies for cheap as well with that, so you can do some very, very powerful combos. It just works out really, really well. Aggression and Protection can honestly do really good as well, just not as good, which is why I've ranked them kind of like this. Up next, we have Groot. We're on to the Guardians, and he is a very fun character, but he started out with quite some difficulties, and I think the big scam is protection for him. People wanted to play him in protection, but the thing is, he wants to keep flipping forms a bit like Black Widow in a way, honestly, because his alter ego ability is so good. That's what gets him his growth counters, and he'll be protected from losing them there as well from attacks or quick strike, things like that. So I really think Groot wants Justice to help keep the threat down. Maybe if you can find a confuse, keep the villain confused so you can keep on flipping. So Justice, threat control is what Groot needs the most. That will let him go Ultra Ego the most, which is what he wants to do the most. So he will get the most out of all his actual cards, whether that's his upgrades that spend growth counters or his events, which require you to have a lot of growth counters to be efficient. Leadership can do kind of similar, just not quite as well, but it does have more card draw, and he does like card draw, so it does work pretty well there. And then, again, 2-player, kind of the same thing, but when you get to 3 and 4-player, with a small card collection, you do not want Groot being your main source of threat control, take my word for that. With a full card collection, however, Overwatch is a thing, and he is one of the best users of Overwatch in the entire game, maybe next to Deadpool and Spider-Ham. It's just very, very good. He can basically remove 10 threat with one of his events, and use Overwatch to duplicate that, so it's 20 threat removed, which is kind of as crazy as it sounds. Protection does get better for him. Now, yes, it is a little bit risky to get attacked, but usually you can make it so you won't take damage from it. He does have Force Field Generator now with a full card collection, which can help protect his growth counters. But in general, Justice is just so, so solid for Groot. I really recommend it. I actually put Leadership kind of joint top in 2-player, but not solo or 4-player. I think with a full card collection, Justice is just going to help you go Ultra Ego a lot more easily than Leadership. And in 3 to 4-player, you're really going to get the full worth out of Overwatch with him. But in 2-player, you maybe don't need to worry about those huge Overwatches quite as much. And then you also have a more generous scheme to flip, so Leadership actually doesn't, worry about having less confuses in comparison to Justice. Thought that was interesting. There's only a couple of times I've put a choice higher for 2-player than in either solo or 3-player, 4-player. Next up, we have Rocket, who really likes aggression because he has this response on his hero side. When he deals excess damage to an enemy, he gets card draw. Dealing damage is good, but he does have quite a bit of damage as long as you can find a weapon or shore it up with, a certain different card from your aspect. So maybe he doesn't need aggression all that much in solo. Leadership card draw can be really good for him. Justice in general, really nice cards for him there as well. Depends how big your collection is, but they can all work really well. Protection with a small card collection, not so good, guys. And you might think, wow, he's like Hawkeye, 1 defense, 9 hit points. Why aren't these characters wanting protection to, shore that up? That is a weakness that you want to kind of make up for. Well, it's because blocking with allies is generally easier and better. A lot of protection cards really want you to actually defend with your character, which is not always that good if you have 1 defense. Then we have, with a full card collection, protection moving up in a huge way. I love repurpose with Rocket so much. I think it's so good. Though I do think aggression starts to pull ahead of some of the other aspects as well, just because you get more ways to do excess damage, and he can just do some crazy shenanigans in multiplayer, especially with aggression, just taking out so many minions that I think it's really, really fun. Next up, we have Star-Lord, my personal favorite character, who loves leadership. His precon comes with Blaze of Glory, and even with a full card collection, I don't think things change. Blaze of Glory is so incredibly, incredibly good for him. Aggression and Justice, very good as well, honestly, even with a smaller card count. He can do a lot of threat removal himself. He can do quite a lot of damage. He can complement and offset those things in different ways. Protection, I do think he has good builds in it, with a full card collection, not so much without, but just not as good as the other aspects. Leadership really complements him in many ways, giving all the allies a Guardian trait, lets him do a lot of shenanigans, also in aggression with Energy Spear, also honestly in Justice with Befuddled or Problem Solvers. You have some funny builds which can be pretty good. So they're pretty interesting, but yeah, generally leadership, Star-Lord, super good. Next up, we have Gamora, who, a little bit like Ant-Man, she can ping 1 threat off with this finesse ability, but unlike Ant-Man, she can trigger this practically every turn, and she also has a lot of really, really good threat removal cards in her kit. This means she actually has almost too much threat removal for solo play already, which is not something I will be saying very often. This makes aggression very, very good for her. Why not protection or leadership? Well, she's like Miss Marvel in the way that she really wants attack and falling events more than anything. So lo and behold, aggression and justice just do the best for her. And this is a trend that continues. Protection does get better. Leadership isn't bad for her, but I really just think aggression and justice are doing all the things Gamora wants in a really, really good, consistent way. Then we have Drax, and Drax has protection across the top of every category, which is very, very exciting. I think this is the first time in this video it has happened. And yeah, he comes with a protection precon, which lets him ready up with things like Leading Blow, which is just very, very strong. Aggression, you can get some decent damage out. Leadership can kind of cover for weaknesses, get some card draw going. He really wants his upgrade that lets him draw cards when he attacks, but protection just really complements him perfectly. His precon, very well suited to him, and Justice, yeah, not quite so much. He's different to Hulk in the way that he doesn't necessarily want to go alter ego. He doesn't necessarily need threat removal as much. This kind of continues with a full card collection. It just gets a lot better with a lot more readying for protection, or things like Taunt that can accelerate your vengeance counters going up. I do think those are pretty good for him. And again, same problem. You definitely do not want Justice as Drax's aspect in multiplayer. I'll say that, definitely. He will not bring enough warding. It just goes against his entire game plan. So be careful. But yeah, protection, aggression, leadership, honestly, all good in multiplayer. Protection, though, for my money, the best. Next up, we have Venom, and I put every aspect in the best category at every player count, just like Captain America, because Venom's worst aspect is better than most characters' best aspect. And if I had to pick the strongest, I would probably say leadership, but is it most fun? I don't know. I think they're all worth playing equally, which is why they're all equally in the best category. Very, very strong. Venom does whatever he wants to do, and it doesn't matter if your card collection increases. Venom does what he wants with any aspect, and he does it extraordinarily well. He is such a strong character. Then we've got Spectrum, and Spectrum is a very misunderstood character, I think, a very unpopular character, but I think most of the struggles and frustrations of her can be solved on the player's side. I think you can solve that with the right deck building and the right play. If you're changing into a form and then being unhappy you're in that form, you've played the card that's done that, and you haven't got the deck building to otherwise allow you to either cope in the changed form or have not needed to change form in the first place. And with a smaller card collection, this is pretty hard to do, but it's easiest to do in leadership. If she's in her attacking form, your allies can handle the threat removal. If she's in her threat removal form, guess what? Your allies can handle the attacking, and so on and so forth. Getting stuck in defense form is still a problem, but just don't play her defense card. If you have allies out to block for you, you're going to be just fine. I really think leadership solves her problems. I think there's a reason it's her precon. I think it works really well with Avengers or various other builds. You can even build aerial Spectrum. There are different ways, but I just think leadership is very, very good for her. Second up is Justice. So if you go alter ego, you can then flip back to hero form and choose which form you're going to be in. Unlike, let's say, Ant-Man or Wasp, she cannot choose her form at will. I didn't explain that before, but hopefully that makes the rest of what I've just said make sense. But by going Alter Ego, you can choose what form you will then be in. So Justice letting you go Alter Ego more really gives you a lot more control. Aggression and Protection aren't bad for her. A lot of people rate them very highly, but for small card collection, I can't quite endorse them, and I really do think Leadership and Justice are actually her best. I do not think she's an all-rounder that suits all the aspects equally well, like some people think. That is my, I'd say, hot take, but I actually really believe in it. I don't think it's strange at all. This is kind of a trend that continues along the player counts. I do think Justice shines a lot more in multiplayer, where you can actually lean into that free threat removal stat and get so much out of it. For the most part, this stays true of a full card collection, but we've also got Aggression getting really good in multiplayer because of Dive Bomb, Hone Technique. Just as I think with all the card draw, it does move up in solo play. Card draw is synergistic with her because it will help you find options to change form, which sort of offsets her weakness of being in the wrong form. So I do think that is a very good point for her in her favor in Justice. Protection is still good for her. I know it's a lot of people's favorite, but I really don't think it's as good as the others when you optimize the others. I think Readying can be really fun, but again, I just think it has less consistency than the others. The other trap I think I see for Spectrum is people really rely on her stats when I think she's an event-driven character. She has so many events in her signature kit, and I think that's for a reason. Next up, we have Adam Warlock, who kind of has all the aspects. So with a small card collection, yeah, you're just taking the 4 main aspects and you're playing Adam Warlock. Now, with a full card collection, technically you could bring the Paul aspect. Now, it does have some pros and cons, and I actually have come around to thinking that the Paul aspect with Adam in a perfect world might actually be better than maybe taking Aggression. Just think those triple resources can be so valuable for him setting up quick, which is his main weakness. However, I think the threat of Dreadpool coming in when you are a slow setup character, you know, effectively the Paul aspect has a second kind of Shadow of the Past. I think for a slow setup character, that is quite scary. Overall, I would still stick with the main aspects, which is mostly what this video is about anyway. But I just thought that was fun to talk about. Adam Warlock, he takes all the aspects. It is what it is for this video. And then we have Nebula. Nebula wants to go Alter Ego, very much similar to Black Widow, but instead of playing preparations, she plays techniques, but she gets rewarded for playing those in Alter Ego, then she can flip down and start to trigger them in the start of her next turn. So Justice being the aspect to help her go Alter Ego the most, and also her precon, so I can guarantee with a small collection, you'll have some good Justice cards. Now, with a full card collection, I do think Leadership slightly pulls ahead in 3 and 4 player games. I just think you're playing techniques, they do different things. Leadership, being so flexible, can really work around those and help you out. But really, she is pretty good in every aspect. I wouldn't necessarily lean toward Protection personally, though, but she does have some builds with it that are fun. Next up, we have War Machine, who also wants to keep going Alter Ego like Nebula, but it's closer to Groot because he needs to go Alter Ego to keep replenishing his counters. Also very similar to She-Hulk, he's such a high damage character who wants to go Alter Ego, just like She-Hulk does. I didn't mention it for her. But again, that forwarding, very bad. In solo play, we've got to go Justice to offset that. Leadership can be really good, but Justice I just think more consistent, especially with a smaller card count. He does come with a Leadership precon, but I don't think it's anything too special, though it is interesting. In 2-player, I think Justice can be fun to kind of control the pace of the game, the threat removal, so you can kind of safely flip when you need to. You can be responsible for that, so he's very happy if somebody else does that as well. Otherwise, you can just lean into damage through Aggression, through Leadership, again at 3 and 4 player. And I think that trend mostly continues with a full card collection, but the reason Justice kind of steps up in 2-player is it comes with Float Like a Butterfly, which is a card that if the enemy is confused, your attacks deal an extra damage. War Machine with his shoulder cannon can put out a ridiculous amount of attacks. Drew is a very famous deck builder. He's got a really good deck for that on Marvel CDB. Definitely recommend that. Can be very good solo as well. In 3 to 4 player, it's still really good, but I've kind of made this video from the perspective in multiplayer that you're only going to have one person in each aspect. You do not want War Machine being your main threat controller in multiplayer. Even if he synergizes with Shield, I just don't think it's going to work the way you want it to. Let him focus on damage. Have somebody else put Float Like a Butterfly out on him. Next up, we have Valkyrie, who is a very controversial hero. Some would say she's the GOAT. I would say she's something all right. And mostly that is a solo problem because her Nemesis set is devastatingly powerful. We just talked about that in the last episode of Shadow of the Cast. And yeah, her threat removal relies on defeating a minion, which won't always be out. And it's just hoops to jump through. It's just things to line up. And she also has some quite expensive cards, not a lot of resources. She has cards which don't work if you put her main mechanic, which is the Deathglow upgrade, in the wrong place, which can be a bit frustrating. So solo play just doesn't line up that smoothly for her, but I would recommend Justice or Leadership if you do. Multiplayer though, I definitely recommend Aggression, but even in 2-player, like Leadership's still pretty good in multiplayer in general. It has all that card draw, it has the Avengers trait, it has clarity of purpose when you have a full card collection, but I don't think overall it changes much with a full card collection. In the multiplayer, you go Aggression. In solo play, you just try and control the threat and hope you can get past your Nemesis set if it comes out. Last but not least from Wave 4, we have Vision. Some people say Vision is really just all about his signature ally, Vivian. Some people say she is kind of the hero and Vision is just there to support her. But we don't condone that here on this channel. I would definitely not make any jokes about that whatsoever. Vision is actually a really strong hero in his own right. He has a lot of really interesting and powerful cards. His form changing is actually really interesting. In one form, he can take less damage. The other form helps him draw an extra card. He has really, really good threat removal. And in a world now where we have lots of player side schemes, having that much threat removal, and his is some of the best in the game, I don't think people talk about that enough, is really powerful. So here's a lot of new combos with a full card collection. For smaller card collection though, I do kind of rate him more like this. Aggression, Justice, Leadership, all honestly pretty even. Now, because there's so much threat removal, Aggression can just be free to do lots of damage. He can reduce the damage he takes as well, just go crazy and hurt the villain. Justice, however, has a lot of synergy with him. He has kind of a lot of damage as well. One of his threat removal cards can also be damage. Justice can help, cover the threat while you just go all in on the damage options. Leadership kind of just balances that out. He's a very flexible character. Leadership is a very flexible aspect. You kind of just have to do anything you need at any time. That is really Vision in a nutshell. He has everything covered whenever you need it. Protection, he comes with that as his precon. Not so good, guys. Very, very bad precon. Now, taking things into 2-player, 3-player, 4-player, I already think you should lean into his threat removal. That is his best strength. Let someone else focus a bit more on damage, and he can help with it nonetheless just the same. With a full card collection, I would say Protection moves up, but I don't think it moves up as much as some people think. He has some really funny builds with it, but if you're keeping lots of minions out, which is kind of a gimmick he's known for, and you get an attachment that says you have to go Alter Ego to clear it, and it ruins your entire game plan, it's just pretty bad news for Vision. If you're on Protection, you're not having easy ways to just clear the board. It's a little bit kind of hit and miss. I just think Justice, Aggression, Leadership in solo play have a much smoother game plan. Again, in multiplayer, just lean into that threat removal and his flexibility, and I think you'll have a really good, much more consistent time. Although Protection and Aggression can be extremely good if played in the right way, against the right enemy, so on and so forth. So then we've got Spider-Man Miles Morales, and I think people will be surprised to see Aggression here. His threat removal and control is so good baseline, Aggression can really shine and combo with his 5 attack events. Then we've got Leadership, and he comes with all the web warriors really in his Sinister Motives expansion box. Leadership is so good with those. It's really very, very strong. Justice is fine. Protection, honestly, also fine. But those Aggression and Leadership, I just think they do so much for solo play, and Leadership goes on to do it really well at 2 and 3 and 4 player. And I do think as well for Justice, though his Justice builds are very, very strong, he wants to play his signature cards quite a lot, which typically do a lot of status cards and things. He doesn't really want to focus so many of his resources on threat removal if he's got his signature cards in hand. Whereas in 3 to 4 player, you want your Justice player to be really hot on that threat because it's the biggest part of scaling in multiplayer. It is the thing that's going to threaten you the most. So maybe not the perfect match with him. In multiplayer, this basically stays the same for the exact same reasons. Web Warriors, Allies, Leadership, very, very good. Then we have Ghost Spider, and here's another character with Protection all at the top. Protection getting some love here, even with a smaller card pool. Now she actually comes with a Protection precon, and it has some good cards there for her, and that only gets better with a full card collection, but so do the other aspects. So I do think Protection is her best regardless, and I do really recommend you start playing her in that aspect first. But I do think Aggression gets pretty close, and I don't necessarily think Aggression is better in solo play than multiplayer just from his positioning here, but I actually was trying to convey that I think Justice is much better than Leadership for her, but I don't think Justice is as good in solo play. And I know there's a lot of talk about Upside the Head, a new card for her that's really good, and Predictable Ploy. Upside the Head is good for her, but she doesn't really want to go Alter Ego too much. Maybe if you've got George Stacy in play, but that's like another hurdle. And if the villain is steady and stalwart as well, maybe not quite as good. So definitely think Protection is the best. I definitely would then put Aggression second. And Justice, if the villain isn't steady or stalwart, if you can get good value out of Upside the Head, I do think that's very good as well. But in solo play, not quite as good. Yes, going Alter Ego, you can do some things with her, but I really think she wants to stay in hero form. Especially, if you look at her defense builds with Unflappable, which she's very, very reliable at triggering, very cheap resource generator, I don't think Justice comes as close. Now, in multiplayer, if you can Upside the Head, someone else can take advantage of the confused. You can still ready up with your response on Ghost Spider. That's very, very good. Predictable Ploy, which is another card that triggers her dizzying reflexes, her sort of response you kind of want to build around. Now, despite that, the reason I haven't put Justice higher in multiplayer, like 3 to 4 player, is because I don't think you want her as your primary threat remover, and that is what I think in 3 to 4 player, if you're having one of each aspect, Justice is going to be. So maybe not so good there, but if you're running 2 Justice characters, Justice Ghost Spider can be really very good as well. Then we've got Nova, who I really like. He's actually really good in every aspect, maybe not with the smaller card collection, but nonetheless, I think he shines most in aggression and justice. And that is because he has this Unleashed Nova Force card. It's an event, and when he defeats minions or side schemes, he gets to ready up. Some good stuff happens. He gets card draw, and aggression and justice are the two best aspects at dealing with minions or side schemes, respectively. Leadership has, good ways to deal with those, but it's not Nova doing it, so it doesn't count. Although it can, of course, soften them up, I do just think aggression and justice really lean into Nova's game plan of what he wants to do. You'll have a better time with Nova, a more fun time with Nova, aggression and justice, in my opinion. Now, with a full card collection, I do think in solo play, I do have to acknowledge just how good leadership is with him. He has a lot of money. He's one of the richer heroes in the game, I would say, especially at least in the early game, and justice can just get a lot of work done there. So it is very, very good. Protection has a lot of readying. When he readies, as you can see his response here, that readies his helmet. His helmet you will basically always have on turn 1, and it generates a resource. So protection's readies kind of refund a resource cost, but he also has very low stats. Now, that is better with the specialized training side scheme, which he can defeat easily and does combo nicely with Unleashed Nova Force. But long story short, I still think aggression and justice can just clear more things more easily, and especially in 2 and 3 player, where you can use maybe the Miss Marvel ally to bounce even the odds back into your hand to do that again with all the resources you have, or even, aggression dive bomb, hone technique combos that he kind of sort of came with. He came with hone technique. I just think they take the lead there. So that is what I recommend for Nova. Then we have Ironheart, who really just wants to get her progress counters so she can get to this version 3 you can see on the screen. Justice and leadership are going to be the best for that. Justice will help control threat. She can always get counters when she's alter ego, so that works really nicely. Leadership has a lot of card draw. That's going to get you the cards that get you progress counters. But if you take things to a full card collection, that gets even stronger. So yes, she has good defense, but because she wants to keep going alter ego to get counters, I don't think protection works as well. And aggression, again, I just don't think covers things as well as justice and leadership for her. So that full card collection, she can get a lot more card draw from justice. You can do some kind of, the turbo draw builds one way or another, skilled investigator, clear the error. You can just burn through her deck, but you can also confuse the villain more and then go alter ego safer to get more of those counters that way. Leadership, on the other hand, gets cards like Beast, which is an ally who can pull resource cards. Her Stroke of Genius, I think, is maybe the best resource card in the game, at least top 2, top 3, very, very strong. But also leadership just has even more card draw as well compared to a smaller collection, and these things all help her set up quicker. So even with a full collection where you can have like hone technique and dive bomb with her, you have to get aerial with her, and it won't help her set up quicker in the first place, which is I think what you want, because once Ironheart is set up, once she is version 3, you have basically won the game. She is so strong. Like Iron Man, she has an extremely strong late game. Next up, we have Spider-Ham, and I've actually put aggression and leadership top for him, but for different reasons than Miles Morales, even though it's kind of, reminiscent of that. So for solo play, I think Spider-Ham's biggest weakness is actually getting overwhelmed by minions, and that can be problematic. Aggression just shores up that weakness really, really easily, while Spider-Ham retains his insane forwarding and his pretty strong survivability, and his very, very strong resource generation as well. Leadership, however, takes most advantage of the Web Warriors, and he has the money to make it go even further. It will just do a lot of work. He doesn't come with the full Web Warrior suite of cards, but he does come with a couple of nice ones. He comes with the SPDR ally, which he can make very good use of. Just is good for him. He has lots of threat removal, but still fine for solo play. Protection, I don't think it has that much going on with it. Take him to multiplayer. He's got such good threat removal, some of the best in the game as well, some of the best resource generation as well. Just think focus on threat removal and just general helping out, 2 and 3 and 4 player. I just think that'll work out much better than aggression overall, and that trend kind of continues into multiplayer. Although I do think with clarity of purpose, leadership just moves up in a huge way over the other aspects. So clarity of purpose is a 1-cost upgrade, and it's when you take damage, you generate a resource. As you can see on Spider-Ham's card here, when he takes damage, he gets a toon counter, which can be spent as a resource. So clarity of purpose is now generating you 2 resources at a time. It is absurd. It is completely absurd. It was released at the same time, but not in his pack. It was in SPDR, Spider's pack. And yeah, that goes crazy. It's hard to compete with that. The only reason I think Justice can compete with that in 3 to 4 player is because Overwatch, controlled by Spider-Ham, used with Ham It Up, can be basically as good as Groot. You can remove 10 plus threat and then duplicate it somewhere else. You can absolutely do that pretty consistently, in all honesty. And he just has such good threat removal in general that he is so good at controlling the scaled up threat in his high player counts. Then we have SPDR, also known as Special Doctor, also known as Spider, I think it's actually pronounced, but Spider is a very fun hero, very unique hero, who, a bit like Venom and Captain America, I think works really well in every aspect, but when you get to 3 and 4 player, less so. Why is that? So although, yes, when she's fully set up, she can absolutely clear the board and deal with any threat she needs to, with that free hand size starting off the first few turns, she's probably going to be worse at clearing out the minions and side schemes than a lot of characters would, which I think holds her back from those roles. Whereas with leadership being kind of in the all-rounder role, she can just do anything she kind of has access to, anything the group needs. And then you've got protection, and she actually comes with a protection precon, which has things like energy barrier and repurpose, which means you don't even have to play defensive protection with her, even if you've only just got her and the core set, for example. So you can always play a good protection deck with her, which will do a lot similar to leadership in kind of being an all-rounder, kind of a bursty kind of all-rounder with repurpose. But nonetheless, I think that just suits her better in those bigger player counts where you might want more threat removal and aggression, sort of attack on demand. And that is kind of true, I think, in multiplayer as well. Leadership and protection also are the ones that synergize best with her signature ally, Venom. You can keep her alive more, get her out more easily, ready her up. You know, you can do all these different things, and her signature ally is one of the best in the game. Very, very, very good. Then we're on to Colossus. We're on to the X-Men on this. Yeah, it's a long video, guys, but thank you for sticking with me. Now, he comes with a protection precon, but it's one of the worst precons, I think, in the game. And in a general sense, I do not think protection suits him that well. I do not think he really wants to defend that much. And even aggression, I don't think he needs solo. He has so much damage already. His big weakness is threat removal. He has practically no forwarding cards, no threat removal in his entire hero kit. He does have a signature ally which can, and he can use armor up to kind of avoid the villain scheming if things line up correctly. But generally, I think Justice smooths him out really well. What is so good about Colossus going Alter Ego, which is what Justice will allow, is that when Colossus is Alter Ego, he's going to draw 2 more cards. He has a hand size of 6 instead of 4. But also, when he flips back down, he gets a tough for free. That is his ability. You can see it on his hero side here. After he comes back to hero form, he gets a tough. He relies on toughs. The more you go Alter Ego, the more toughs you're going to get, effectively kind of for free. You're going to get a 50% increased hand size. It's just so much extra profit and resources. Trying to stick it out in hero form and generate toughs the normal way, like, even if you have the full card kind of collection, I really don't think it adds up to just flipping all the time consistently. In multiplayer, obviously, he can do that anyway, and I do think that works out well. And in that case, I think someone else might be better off controlling the threat, and he likes leadership. Now, I think people might be surprised to see leadership here in 2 and 3 and 4 player as the recommended one, but it has a lot of card draw if you have a small collection. That is something you can guarantee. And the more card draw you have, the quicker he's going to get Iron Will, the quicker he's going to get Titanium Muscles. These very powerful cards that really power Colossus up, and I think that's very valuable. But also, a lot of the things he wants to do affect the villain. Steel Fist, still don't confuse the villain, that's its primary use. Made of Rage is going to overkill onto the villain quite a lot because he will do so much damage with it, and that means he might not be as good as controlling things on the board. Yes, I do think aggression can control minions pretty well, like, it's really good, but I just think leadership having that flexibility and a card draw may be a little bit better and giving a smoother experience and helping out the table more because of that in the long run in multiplayer, in all honesty. So I think this could be unpopular, but that is my opinion. And I think that generally continues with a full card collection, but aggression does get even better. It just has some really nice cards which you can hit really hard with, boosting up his basic attack, getting some things going with the overkill. 2-player game, you can put that villain down very, very easily. In 3 and 4 player, I think because a lot of the stuff he wants to do is dedicate resources to affecting the villain, whether it's, overkill or Steel Fist, I don't think he naturally has the ability to clear up like 4 or 5 minions on the board like a lot of aggression characters might have in 3 and 4 player. So I think that is a bit of a detriment to him. But also, yes, he can run really good attack training, sort of X-Men decks, but most of the X-Men can as well. And I just think leadership runs that bit smoother in 3 and 4 player, if that makes sense. I do want to mention that protection does get a lot better with the full card collection as well, but I really do think aggression getting more damage going, leadership letting him do kind of more Colossus things. In general, I still prefer aggression over protection, and I do actually prefer leadership over aggression in 3 and 4 player. Then we have Shadowcat. Shadowcat is so good in protection, another character with protection across the board as her best. The characters that synergize with protection just love protection, and her protection build is incredibly strong. But I also think her aggression and justice builds are also extremely, extremely strong, just not as strong. But I do think they are more fun. So if you haven't tried her in aggression or justice ever, do it. I think it's really, really good. I think it will surprise you. Leadership, she can do well with, honestly, but it just doesn't synergize with her whatsoever. She wants to be playing events. She wants to be defending, that kind of thing. So, yeah. Protection, super, super strong. Aggression and justice, very strong, but also very fun. And I think that trend really continues even into a full card collection. Those things just get a lot stronger, like a lot stronger. And then we have Cyclops, who is kind of the reversal. If we flip these around, now leadership has moved to the top, protection has moved to the bottom. He's still good in protection, but leadership is kind of insane for him. So on his alter ego side, he has a text that says, when deck building, you can include X-Men from any aspect. You can take all the best X-Men from every aspect and then combine them with all the leadership toys to work with those allies. And it is kind of crazy. It is really, really strong. But a bit like Shadowcat, although I think leadership is by far his strongest, instead of protection like Shadowcat, I do think aggression and justice are more fun for him and are still really, really powerful. So if you only play Cyclops and leadership, I definitely recommend you try aggression or justice. Protection I do think is quite significantly weaker, but it's still good because Cyclops is good. He's very well rounded and has some really nice valuable tools, including, again, all those X-Men from the different aspects. Now, with the full card collection, it's basically the same, but he has access to Uncanny X-Men and all the X-Men characters, which is just insane. I think Cyclops with Uncanny X-Men is completely broken, like really strong. So very, very good there. Otherwise, yeah, aggression, justice, protection, they're all better for him, but I still put them in the same order overall. Then we have Phoenix, who starts with his free forwarding, and that means your early game threat removal is basically completely covered. That means you can go wild with the damage from aggression. Also means leadership can just be leadership. You can just work around it. That can bring the damage. But she also works with the psychic cards. Psychic Kicker being my favorite. Just really, really strong. That comes with her. So have to really respect leadership. Aggression, though, gets that psychic assault. Really can control the villain while putting damage onto them. In solo play, very, very valuable. Justice is fine. Protection, it's all right. But really love aggression and leadership for solo. Bring up to 2 and 3 and 4 player, I think Justice starts to move up because you can kind of, use that free threat removal stat and still not worry about bringing extra threat removal and having too much threat removal. She can be a really, really strong threat controller. Now, because I think her threat removal is so good and I really think Psychic Kicker is very, very strong, I think with the core aggression cards, if you have a small collection, maybe just 1 or 2 packs here or there, I don't think they'll synergize as well and Justice or leadership do with Phoenix, so that's why aggression is a little bit down. But for full card collection, in multiplayer, in 3 to 4 player, I do put aggression back up there as well. Hone Technique Phoenix, very strong. Attack Training Phoenix, very, very strong. Phoenix in general, very good character. If you have all the cards that benefit her for being a psionic from Psylocke. Just watch out for her nemesis still, in solo especially, that can be pretty dangerous. Then we have Wolverine, who is Mr. Attack. He has his claws, which he can play an attack through them every turn. Kind of works out for cheap, even though he has to spend health because he regenerates health. He's really, really good in all the aspects, I think, in solo play, except protection with a small card collection. With a big card collection, that's going to change. We'll see that shortly. But really, he's kind of an all-rounder, just with tons and tons of damage. So you can kind of play him however you want. Leadership will kind of round him out, while he'll still be doing lots of damage. Justice will make sure the threat is on a complete lockdown, while with his damage, the minions and the villain's health will be just getting destroyed. And then aggression, of course, he has all the more attacker cards to synergize with. With a small collection, you at least have the cards from his aggression precon, which are very, very good, which kind of, in a small collection, elevate aggression. Now, going into multiplayer, I think you want to focus more on the damage, less on, Justice helping to deal with threat. Just go all out there on damage, let somebody else do the threat removal, and I think that will work well. Yes, you can help with Wolverine. Track by scent is very good, but really, in multiplayer, you want Wolverine to be bringing the damage. Now, moving on to a full card collection, we can see protection move up in a huge way. This is mostly because of the card Hard Knocks. It's probably the best attack event in protection. It works really well with him. You have to use it through his claws, defeat a minion, get a tough, then that tough will protect you from the enemy's attack, so you don't even have to worry about playing an ally. A lot of the time I play Wolverine, I'm playing an attack through the claws, then I'm playing an ally, and if I can do that every turn, I consider that good. With Hard Knocks, you're kind of covering your defense, which is a lot of what that ally is when I'm playing it, while doing damage as well, so I think protection works really nicely. Also some good healing kind of options, readying options, which work quite nicely. He can get a boosted attack stat. Jubilee can boost it even higher. He likes the healing because he can spend more of his health on attacks that way, so on and so forth. So protection gets a major boost, but I still actually think the other aspects are really, really good. I still think aggression in 3 to 4 player, you can deal so much damage, control so many minions with it. It's really, really consistent. And I still think that works well in solo play because you also have, I would say, better allies in aggression overall there that can kind of help support him. And yeah, he just has a lot of ways to be very, very strong. Then we have Storm, who's one of my other favorite characters, really powerful character. So she comes with the Uncanny X-Men card in her precon. And if you've got a small card collection, I just don't think anything keeps up with that. She's very good with allies in general, so leadership just wins out at every player count. Now, she does have really good damage and actually really good forwarding, so she's actually really good in aggression and justice in those kind of roles. But also, if she's focusing on, let's say, aggression damage, she'll have tons of her own threat removal in her own kit to help keep the threat controlled while just putting out crazy damage, and vice versa. Justice can just lock down the threat, or she puts out incredible damage. So super, super flexible character, really, really fun. We can make every aspect work for her, except maybe protection with a small card collection. But that all changes with a bigger card count. If we look with a full card collection, I just think protection gets a lot better for her, particularly in solo play. There is an ally called Multiple Man, and when you play him, you get other copies of him coming to play. And if you have Thunderstorm, which gives one attack to all sort of characters really in the whole game, in play, it's one of her weather supports, then all three of your Multiple Men are doing a boosted damage, which is really, really fun. That is a combo that was first said to me by someone called Maggie Doladine, very talented player. So I really, really enjoy that. And I think that honestly is such a head start for her that it's hard to compete with. And even that kind of thing in 2, 3, and 4 player, you get a lot of good X-Men allies that she can work really well with, lots of cool combos. So I do think protection has a massive step up for her. Even repurpose decks, really, really strong. Again, she does so much damage. She's so good with allies. I think aggression and leadership really stand out for her. But Justice, still really good. Still tons and tons of threat removal, very consistent at all player counts. Then we have Gambit, who I really like in aggression and justice. So he is a character that boosts the damage attacks do, and that works for any attack from any aspect and so on. But I think it works really well with the aggression attack events because they are kind of designed, you know, to be really damaging, particularly one card called 1x1, which hits multiple enemies. If you boost the damage of 1x1, a bit like Miss Marvel's and Biggin, you're getting that boosted damage on multiple targets. I think that's really, really good. A bit like his own card, Royal Flush. Justice works really well with locking down the enemy's threat, keeping them confused, letting him go alter ego. His hero kit's kind of split between being in sort of hero form and alter ego, so to get the most of it, you want to keep flipping. Justice, I think, does that the best and offers the most control. However, leadership is still pretty good with him. Protection, you might think would go well because there's that free defense. I think because you want to keep flipping, and if you're not, you're losing it on half of his kit. I really don't love protection for him. I think this will be unpopular. Some people love protection Gambit. I think protection Gambit is fun, but I prefer aggression and justice, and then I prefer leadership on top of that. I do think that because he has a thwarting event that really wants you to remove the last threat, and that is harder at higher player counts where the threat can go a bit crazy. And 3 and 4 player, I don't recommend Justice as much, but it can still do really well. And if you go to a full card collection, if you have Uncanny X-Men, again, the X-Men are so good with Uncanny X-Men, it's hard to quantify it. I think leadership does extremely well for him. Aggression and Justice, though, is still doing extremely well as well. More attacks, more kind of things he can combo with, really very strong. Then we've got Rogue, who I think is the most misunderstood character in the whole game. I still want to do a video on her. Just got so many ideas, so many things I want to do, but it is on the way. So Rogue is a character who can put touched on another character, take their traits, her events change depending on where you put touched, but she is very much an event-driven hero. And event-driven heroes mean they can do a lot of burst output when they need to. The events can get like a lot of damage done or a lot of threat removal. They can get a lot of value, but if you don't have the right event in your hand at the right time, you can be stuck. Put a bunch of allies with her, and they will help cover for you when you don't have the right event to do what you need. I just think leadership is a very safe way to play her if you have a small card collection. Now, the other aspects I could talk about a bit, protection, you know, it's not that good with a small card collection. It just is what it is. Even though she comes with protection, I still actually prefer the other aspects for her. And I do think her threat removal is so good. You can really lean into her taking the Justice role in multiplayer. But with a full card collection, I really think you can do anything with her. I think she has some really cool, interesting builds. You can go for a protection sort of repurpose build, and because she can put touch on a protection ally and use superpower adaptation, you can repurpose really, really reliably compared to an average hero. Aggression, you want to dive bomb really reliably, you can do it. You can just grab bring it when you have minions. You can do all sorts of kind of interesting combos with her. I really like messing around with them. Justice in particular has a lot of really high value kind of combos. Turn the tide, clear the area, grab them at will. And although Bulletproof Bell is extremely good, and putting touch on your allies instead of putting touch on the villain does hurt you. It kind of has, I think I had it described as an opportunity cost, because now your kind of events, especially your defense event, are getting less value or maybe aren't usable. I do think if you build into combos, you're just going to get so much output throughout the whole game. It will be a lot more fun that I recommend it, which long story short, I think makes all the aspects really good for her. Leadership, I do think maybe pulls slightly ahead, but not enough for me to categorize it differently to all the others, just because leadership has a lot of card draw, has clarity of purpose, which is a nice resource generator for her. She loves resource generators. Build allies into her, build resource generators into her, and enjoy. She will work very smoothly. Next up, we have Cable. We're starting on the X-Force now. We're getting there, guys. And Cable is really, really fun. And he comes with a leadership sort of archetype for the X-Force, which is all about defeating side schemes, which is what Cable himself is all about. So with a small card collection, his X-Force leadership stuff, I think, is hard to compete with, even though the box he comes in also does have Overwatch, which makes Justice a very close contender already. But I do think leadership has the edge. Aggression and protection, they can be okay, but not my favorite. With a full card collection, I think Justice and leadership swap, and I think aggression and protection in solo play are actually really strong as well. I don't love them in 2 and, sort of 3 and 4 player, multiplayer as much, but solo play, aggression and protection, optimized, get really, really good for Cable. Leadership still really, really good for Cable, but Justice for Cable just gets a little bit silly, especially in solo play. In sort of 2, 3, 4 player, I actually think Leadership and Justice are quite close for him, but Justice, just so good solo. Then we have Domino, who is kind of a flipping character, maybe not as obviously, but Pip the Pug, her alter ego ability, Painted Lady, definitely some of her strongest things to use. Get your best cards back, move them around. It's just so, so good. You want to be able to go alter ego. That's where Justice comes in, and she does have a Justice precon, I think kind of for that reason. You want to control the threat, so you can make sure you can go alter ego. Really good. Leadership, again, Justice and Leadership, still really good in solo play for all these characters with low forwarding, and just good in general. Protection, because you want to go alter ego a lot. Your defensive stuff, not going to be that reliable to use if you are alter ego, so on and so forth. She is better with it because she can swap cards around and spend them on a lot and get cards into her hand. So anything defensive that you can't use, then you can spend, but it's kind of just solving a problem rather than giving you a strength, if that makes sense. Now, with a full card collection, I know a lot of people really like Protection. I still don't love it. I think it gets better, but here's the problem with Protection, even when you have the readying up stuff that work with Probability Field. Her real best synergy there, because she wants to flip, is not defending, it is with readying. The problem with readying is it only really gets good with her with the card I mentioned, Probability Field. Now, she is a character all about discarding cards. What are the odds you discard Probability Field early on? Maybe they're pretty good. Maybe you think, oh, I won't use my discarding stuff until I've got it, but then you're kind of limiting what you can use from her because you want that one upgrade that is really vital for your game plan. And even then, it is good, but I don't think it's worth how good aggression, justice, leadership can be, where you're not so reliant on getting this one card set up. They can be good from the get-go. So yeah, protection, I don't think is as good as most people think on her, though I do still think it is very good with the full card collection. Then we have Psylocke, and she has so much forwarding baseline, you can kind of just go for aggression and have a good time. You do not need Justice for forwarding, although I still think Justice does fine in solo play, because you can just focus on damage with her as well. She's a super, super flexible character, can kind of do anything she needs at any time. And leadership as well works really well because of that. You can flexibly use Psylocke for whatever's good in your hand at the time. Allies will cover for anything else, or kind of add into it if you're going all in on one thing. Just works really smoothly. Protection, I don't think works as well with a small collection. Then we have multiplayer to consider. I think her threat removal is so good you can just fully focus on it there, and she will do that role really well. I think protection moves up in a huge, huge way. I really love her with Repurpose, which is a skill card. She has an upgrade, I think it is, that lets you kind of find skill cards from your deck. She can be so consistent with Repurpose, and she has the money to be able to play kind of tech upgrades, control the board as well, and just do anything she needs. So I actually really love her with Repurpose builds. And she can also do really well with Karma, which is a protection X-Men card who has a sonic trait. Now, if you have Cerebro, you can do some disgusting things with Psylocke and allies, notably Professor X and Karma. But yeah, Cerebro for Psylocke is very, very good. Shoutouts to leadership for that. But also Hone Technique. Everything is just really good. But even in Justice with its sonic event, I think Psychic Manipulation, that can help you control so much threat. She can pay for it easily. You can play it from Alter Ego, which is most likely to draw it. And it's really good. It's more reliable in multiplayer when more people are alter ego. She's just so good in every aspect in multiplayer. It's insane. And honestly, still really good in every aspect in solo play. Full card collection really opens her up. Then we have Angel, who really has one game plan, and that is he wants to play aerial events. If he doesn't have aerial events, he wants card draw to find them. But with a small card collection, you might not have many, except in protection, because he comes with a precon which contain a few. So protection starts out very good with a small collection. With a full collection, however, he's really good in every aspect because you'll have aerial stuff, or you'll have card draw, like leadership in particular, very good with strength in numbers. I know Drew has a deck out on that as well. I do think maybe the other aspects are a little bit more fun, but nonetheless, he's very, very good in all of them at every player count because he can do everything with all his events. A lot of them are very flexible or get card draw, or you're in Archangel form and you play a forwarding event and that causes it to do damage with your Angel of Death ability. It's just very, very good. Angel can do everything. Then we have X23, one of the new characters, one of the characters I never reviewed on my channel because I took a break sort of just after she came out for a month or two. And she is so, so good. Lots of cheap cards. You can kind of machine gun them out and get lots of things going. Very dynamic character to play with lots of combos. Very, very fun. And I really like her in every aspect. The problem is with a small card pool, I don't think protection is going to do it for you. But nonetheless, it can actually be kind of interesting with her. So although I've got protection low for her, but nonetheless, I still think it's good. and I would recommend her really in solo play with anything but protection. Same for 2-player. In 3 and 4-player, I think her damage potential is so much higher than a small collection of cards will allow for Justice to, threat move comparatively. I think you just want to lean into that damage. But then we have the full card collection, and again, protection moves up so much because it has so many ways to ready. I think leadership can just take Honey Badger to the next level as well, which means I think aggression is actually her worst aspect in general with a full card collection. I still think aggression is good for her, but I think the way protection can ready up, if you want to focus on X23 doing lots of damage with her claws, I actually think protection is the way to go. 3 to 4 player, I actually think she can really effectively control the threat, but I do think leadership and protection just let her go crazier and let her see her full potential. And then we have Deadpool, and I do not know how to rate this guy. Now, with a small collection, he comes with a massive amount of pool cards. I do think pool will be best for him. If he goes down to 1 hit point, you can then recover for 8, get up to 9 health, you're back at full health. The triple resources are basically always online for him or close enough. That's very strong in itself, and Deadpool really just wants to do Deadpool things, so Mulligan moving you through your deck can really help out with that as well. But if you have a full card collection, things get a little bit crazier, and I've had to go for this. And this isn't very informative, but I do not know how to rate Deadpool. So aggression will help you win probably the fastest, most consistently, but you also probably lose the most because you might take damage while you're alter ego. For those that don't know, Deadpool has this ability, the Regenerating Degenerate, where if he would be defeated in hero form, he actually gets knocked into alter ego with 1 hit point left. So he has a pseudo invincibility, but let's say the villain's attack knocks you to alter ego, then your encounter card says you take 1 damage. You just lose the game there and then, at least in solo play. That is pretty brutal. Depending on the scenario, that could either be very common, or it could never happen and you basically can't lose. So very hard to rate aggression. Wins the hardest, but also probably loses the hardest when it leans into that aggressive strategy. Paul can also kind of do that, but it does have at least, cards like Get Good to protect you. Justice and Protection, probably the more conservative ways to play him. You can have energy barriers to protect you if you are taking damage in alter ego. Justice has a lot of control that can help out, help you build up a board, help you accelerate your game. So can leadership, lots of card draw. He's actually quite good with the Uncanny X-Force card and things like that, especially for multiplayer. His Cable ally is one of the best signature allies in the game as well, in my opinion. He just wins so fast in solo, he doesn't really need it sometimes, but still a very good ally that I really like. And the thing is, a day or two after Deadpool came out, or maybe even on the day, Nelson messaged me, and I assume most of you guys know Nelson, a very big content creator for Marvel Champions, and he's like, so I just took on Expert Venom Goblin with only basic cards and absolutely annihilated him. And that is kind of the level Deadpool is on. He can just win if things line up, which he can make happen quite well. So the aspect almost doesn't matter that much because Deadpool is such a crazy, weird character with such explosive damage. Sometimes you just need to survive a few turns to win. I don't really know how to rate him overall for you guys. So ending on a bit of a weird note here, as he's the most recent character when I make this video. But yeah, Deadpool can kind of do really well in everything in different ways. Depends how much you value consistency versus speed. So yeah, bit of a weird character to end this on, bit of a weird conclusion, but that is all the characters, every player count, every aspect, with a small collection and a large collection. Thank you so much if you've watched this far. It's been a wild ride. I know a lot of you, again, will have your favorite aspects have been rated low. A lot of mine are as well. That's just me being honest. Just because I rate an aspect lower than some of the others does not mean it's not worth playing, that it's not viable, that it's not fun. It absolutely can be all of those things. But I hope if you're newer to the game or newer to certain characters, this gives you an idea of where to play them and what aspect to start with, just for the good kind of smooth experience or better results. And if you're a sort of more veteran player, hope this has been interesting as maybe a point to discuss, just interesting to watch. So thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please like, comment, subscribe, anything that makes YouTube happy. In the next episode, we're actually going to start looking at specific heroes paired up together. I'm not sure if I'm going to do one big video with lots of pairings sort of highlighted, or just pick one pair of characters to do at a time, or even a sort of trio of characters if we want to take it that way. Not sure yet, but that'll be coming up next. Catch you guys next time. Have a great day. Bye.